Hi everyone, and welcome to 3Preet podcast. This week we are talking about Black Lives Matter and how we play a role in dismantling racism. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, these are the few names of our Black brothers and sisters that have been killed because of the color of their skin. One thing I do want to mention is we are not experts and we do not claim to be. Every day we are learning and challenging ourselves on issues of racial justice. I want to start off by kind of opening up the floor with a question. And so Amin and Jaspreet, they can kind of contribute to this conversation that we'll have. What can we as Indian Americans do to stand in solidarity to our Black brothers and sisters?
I think educating ourselves and realizing that we as South Asians do have a part to play in this. This isn't just a white and Black issues. People of all colors need to come together and be a voice. I think me knowing I'm Indian and Asian, I didn't think I had as big of a voice as I thought it was only a Black and white issue. And Hassan Minhaj actually posted a video educating, it was targeted towards Asians and being like, this is our job too, and we need to be giving a voice.
Yeah, there's one thing that he kind of mentioned in his video recently is how immigrants were able to come to the United States. It is because of the civil rights movement, and it is because of Black folks that we're able to come to this country, that our family is here because of them. So we kind of have to own up to our privilege as well. And so the fact that Black folks fought so much to have their rights, and also we benefited from that to come to the United States.
Yeah, I think it's just acknowledging all of the little moments, like everyday moments that happen where you'll hear a relative saying, oh, that person's Gala or whatever. I think we tend to just push that aside as oh, they're an older generation or they won't understand. But I think having the conversation with our parents and each other about not letting things like that slip, because that's kind of where the everyday racism is, where it kind of ends up building to a bigger thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
I think because we're people of color, we don't think we can be racist, but at the end of the day, the older generation and a lot of people do hold microaggressions, saying oh, that guy's Black or that guy's Kala and stuff like that. And if it doesn't start at home, then it's not gonna ripple.
Yeah.
Another note we kind of wanted to talk about is in our own culture, in the Indian culture itself, there are some Bollywood actresses that kind of in recent light came out on social media such as Instagram saying that they stand in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement, but in reality, those Bollywood actresses have been models for skin whitening creams and have been speaking out to fair skin is better. And so in that, a lot of Indians have been speaking out about it and saying that the Bollywood actresses need to reflect on what they've done in the past to be able to be in solidarity with Black folks.
So we kind of had a discussion about this, and I had mixed feelings about it, and you guys were both kind of on one side. So did you want to go over that debate we kind of had over messages?
Yeah, do you want to state your side first?
No, you say your side, because I feel like your side is kind of the common group think that was about this.
Yeah, so Harpreet and I stand on the side that Bollywood actors and actresses really need to look at themselves and realize that it's good that you are supporting Black Lives Matter, But at the end of the day, they need to look back and realize, hey, in my own country, I am not giving that message. I'm saying whiter skin, fairer skin looks better. But then this movement erupts, and I feel like they're bandwagoning. Yes, it's nice to hear their voices and be like, oh my God, they're supporting. That's great. But at the end of the day, are they supporting just because everyone else is supporting? Or are they supporting because like I'm not saying they don't believe in Black Lives Matter, but I think they need to take a harsh look at themselves and realize that they're being hypocritical, supporting skin whitening creams in India and then being like Black Lives Matter, all skin tones are equal, even though a lot of these people still have these contracts like right now.
So, how I felt about this is Bollywood actresses came under a lot of criticism for supporting Black Lives Matter while also being in skin whitening ads. And how I felt about it is that we're kind of blaming people of color for promoting a standard of beauty that they didn't create. Think about like why the public has a demand for skin whitening cream. It's because there's a Western standard of beauty. The whiter you look, the more beautiful you are. So I think instead of criticizing the actresses that promote these kind of ads, you have to ask, why is society so obsessed with skin whitening? And why is society so obsessed with becoming more white? So I just felt like we were missing the point, and we were kind of villainizing people of color for a standard that they didn't create to begin with.
But I believe that they're adding to the society norm of skin whitening. Like, I definitely get where you're coming from. Like, it's known that in the Indian community, if you're fair, you're better.
Well, it's not just Indian community, it's just every community. Like, for example, why do we straighten our hair? It's because white people have straight hair, and curly hair or like kinky hair isn't considered beautiful because of that.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, Oven. I think that we're both, like, all three of us are kind of saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, people of color did not come up with that standard of beauty, of being fair, like being white, having straight hair. But like like Justpreet said, like why do we continue to play into the fair skin game? Why do we continue to put those messages out there to our Indian community that we need to be fair? Like,
Yeah,
we need
and I
to
think
be able to dismantle that and kind of reflect on it and say, like, oh, the British came in and they put this standard of beauty, but we need to work on making our brown skin the standard of beauty today.
exactly. That's how I feel too. I just feel like the general conversation has just been, you don't have an opinion, you promote skin whitening ads instead of looking at the deeper issues embedded in society. So that's kind of why I had mixed feelings. Obviously, skin whitening ads are bad. Obviously, people shouldn't be promoting those at the same time as they're promoting Black Lives Matter. But I just think that as a society, this could have been a learning moment, and we kind of just ended the issue on blaming a person of color, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it would have been easier if they acknowledged the fact that they did skin whitening. But the fact that people just found this out through their background, they're making it like that bigger issue that, hey, we did this in the past. Why are you like promoting Black Lives Matter if that's not what you really think? But it could just be like one of those things where they did it in the past, they don't believe this anymore.
Yeah, the thing with me is that I would have appreciated them coming out with like a video acknowledging that they did take part in that. And then these are the steps that I'm taking, like not me, but the actresses or actors are taking to dismantle that.
Yeah. Well, I have a question. So, Harpreet, I know you've been definitely more involved with social justice than probably anyone in our family. So, how do you feel about kind of the bandwagon supporters? Like, even me personally, I've like maybe had one story kind of about the civil rights march that's going to happen in August, but I haven't been super posting just because I don't want to seem like someone who never supported the movement. Now it's popular, so I'm just gonna jump in and act like I've always like been this huge social justice person.
So for again, like I get where you're coming from. I think that even if you don't post, that doesn't mean that you're not doing other things in the background. A lot
Yeah.
of people think that they need to keep on posting things in order to like support the Black Lives Matter movement or support Black folks, but in reality, like if you're doing stuff, educating yourself, donating, you don't always have to prove to people that you're doing it. And so a lot of people, they're posting in order to get resources out there. And so I feel like that helps a lot of people all over the world to be able to like donate, to be able to go and protest with others, but it doesn't you don't necessarily have to post on your story every single day. um and you don't necessarily have to say on each post that you post on there, like if it's like a picture of you, you don't have to like put it in the description of like, oh, I'm going to post this picture, but keep in mind that like I'm still educating myself. I don't think you have to do that. Hope that kind of aimed at what you're kind of talking about.
Yeah, and then I have another follow-up question for you. Do you think that the posting on social media kind of ends up cycling in its own kind of bubble? Like, to do the actual work to dismantle racism, I feel like we need to be reaching across, not the aisle, but reaching across to people who have these predetermined beliefs, biases. Yeah. Reaching across the aisle to people who have these biases and proving them wrong, just because sometimes I feel like with social media, everyone who follows you generally thinks like you. Not necessarily the case 100%, but overall, people tend to be in their own bubbles of common thinking, I guess.
Mhm.
So do you think that the posting is even doing enough? Like you said, some people are finding out about protests that are happening and marches, and I think that's where it's definitely super valuable. But other than that, do you think a lot of the message is just kind of cycling in its own bubble?
Not necessarily. There's been a lot that's happened even with posting on social media.
Give
And people
examples.
like signing different, what's the word? Different petitions in order to get certain laws passed. And
Yeah.
so like chokeholds, there's certain states that they've banned that now, and cops can't do chokeholds. And if they do, there's going to be reprimand and different consequences that come with it. And so I don't think it's just circulating in its own bubble. Yeah, social media has different like, what's a word for it? Yeah,
Areas.
they have those different hashtags, but in the end of the day, I think with those hashtags and it's building up and building up, a lot of people from different backgrounds, different areas are seeing those posts, and eventually they're like, like what is this? They're gonna read it. Oh, it's a petition. All I have to do is sign it. Okay, I'm gonna sign it. Oh, this is where I need to donate. I'll go donate there. And
Yeah.
so there's been different organizations like bailout organizations from the protests. There's been a lot of people that have been arrested, and unfortunately they have to have money to bail themselves out.
Mhm.
And so a lot of different donation petitions and organizations have helped those people come out of jail, and most likely they weren't even doing anything bad. They were just peacefully protesting, and they're just force from the cops that were responding to it, and then they just ended up arresting them. And so I don't think it's circulating in its own bubble.
I think it's actually really helpful that a lot of people post on social media just because like everyone's constantly on there and a lot of the information I get is from like my friends' stories
Mhm.
because I don't know a lot of people that like read the news. I think Twitter and like Instagram is where people are getting a lot of their information, like the cops that are like getting released, how long like where protests are. And I know a lot of people I follow, like they like tell people to like leave protests because cops are like throwing tear gas and stuff like that, and like to get out of certain areas of a city. And it's just like the quickest way to get information out there for everyone.
Yeah. Going back on the tear gas thing, yeah, a lot of people, they were able to get the message from social media, from Instagrams, from Twitter, to be able to get out of a certain area of a city, just like Jaspreet said.
Okay, I feel like I definitely didn't know about all of those things, like the benefits of posting, so I'm glad that you brought it up.
Yeah. So going off of this, just like ways that people can contribute. Again, we talked about donating money. If we're not able to donate money, you're able to kind of sign petitions so government officials can change laws in order to better police brutality and kind of put those changes in so certain things cops do now aren't able to do those in the coming days, in the coming years. And so again, chokehold, I believe in New York, they're trying to come up with a law where police can't use chokeholds anymore. And there's other things that are trying to get passed. I know recently the president did an executive order, but underneath that, it didn't really benefit anyone. I feel like it just got signed and that's it.
What was the executive order about?
It was to kind of, in his words, law and order. And so underneath that executive order, it basically stated like, oh, police have to be reprimanded, and that's kind of it. There was no benefit to it.
I know,
Basically, it could have been just like a blank piece of paper.
I know Minnesota, where George Floyd died, they've actually disbanded the police, and they're working on alternatives than rather having like the police protecting the citizens, more or less like educating more people about social justice issues and so forth. Do you think disbanding the police and like putting more money into educating people will have a long-term effect on our country, or do you think we need the police?
I feel like in retrospect, like the police will still be there. It'll just be depending on states and their government, but I feel like a lot of people just want the police to get defunded because every year they're taking money away from education, and education and police, the police have this much money in education each year, the money decreases. And so that's another inequality in itself for younger generations that are trying to get their education K through 12.
And doesn't research show that more educated communities require less police intervention to begin with?
Yeah.
That's what I've heard.
I know Boston is making some steps towards educating more people. They've just transferred about $12 million to educate more people about social justice issues. That money came from like the police budget, but they still have like $100 million going towards the police. So I feel like small steps are helping a lot.
Yeah. I think the greatest benefit that'll come out of this is we'll think about the calls that police respond to that they aren't necessarily the most helpful people. Like if we have someone who's dealing with mental health issues, having a mental health person, maybe along with a police officer instead of two police officers, that would be so much better for society in general.
Definitely. I know, I don't know which state it is, but I know there's a certain law that they're trying to pass where they're trying to have counselors and like social workers instead of police in general. Just like you said, for mental health issues, or like when there's just calls that are unnecessary for police to go to, there'll just be someone that comes to help you instead of it ending up being someone that's dead in the end.
And psychology tells us that positive reinforcement is more effective than negative.
Yep. A little bit more on that executive order that I was talking about. So in this article that I have up right now, it talks about like boosting information sharing to better track officers with use of like excessive force complaints, and then like creating services to address mental health and drug addiction and homelessness. But I've just been getting like kind of mixed reviews on this executive order, saying that it's not really going to benefit people in the end. We'll see what happens. I don't know.
Do you think our officers getting more training would help any bit? Because right now they don't complete a lot of hours. Like there's not a lot of hours that you have to do to become a police officer.
I think it should be like a medical professional's license, that if you're behaving differently from a set of standards, you get your license revoked.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. Even in other countries, like there's other countries that you have to have 3 years of education in order to become a police officer. Here, you just have to have a high school diploma,
13 to 19 weeks. Yeah.
go through like police academy, and then bam, you're a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you can do that in a year, or
No,
maybe even less.
you can do it in 13 to 19 weeks.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
So it's like not a lot of time.
And then just going back to what you asked, I feel like if there's some kind of predetermined bias exam that these people can take before they even go through a police training academy, if they fail, I feel like they shouldn't be able to become police officers to begin with. Because if someone has a bias, it's really hard to change that bias.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of police officers that have been in the media recently, they have a bias. I'm not 100 on what the police officer's name is who killed George Floyd, but he apparently was a part of like the KKK, or he was applying to be a part of the KKK. And apparently he had like other like misdemeanors and stuff like that beforehand, and I don't think we as a country are doing our best jobs. Like we lack vetting for our police officers who are supposed to keep us safe, and I feel like they need to like do that bias training. They need to look more into the people that we're hiring.
Yeah, we need to screen the police officers like we screen a lot of other professions, just like becoming a doctor, becoming a nurse, even becoming an EMT.
So just his name was Derek Chauvin.
Yeah, he not the best human.
Yeah, I also think that changing the minds of those that are still stuck in their way, this is how I grew up, this is what I believe in, like they don't acknowledge that there is color on someone's skin. They say I see no color, or they say all lives matter. I think that a lot of like even Congress or your state senators, like you need to call them, you need to send those letters in, you need to email them telling them like we need this. And so a lot of people have been doing those emails, have been sending in those letters, have been calling to tell those government officials that this is what we want to see. We the people are asking you and demanding that this needs to change. And so that's why some of these laws are being changed to regulate the police and like other structures.
All lives matter is not it, sis. And if you like, that's just not it. And I really want to commend like Google and Apple. When you say all lives matter into like Siri or Cortana or Google, they like educate the shit out of you. And I'm like having
Really?
yeah, you can say it right now and they will be like, no, that's not it. And I think like really big companies like that taking this like step of educating people who believe this way is like helping a lot.
I don't think that people who reply with all lives matter should be given as much, I guess. I feel like when someone says all lives matter, we jump into educating them, but I feel like we need to acknowledge the fact that that's such a lazy argument, and anyone with like a shred of compassion understands. So I feel like all lives matter just devolves into this like long-winded explanation of no, it's not only Black Lives Matter, it's all lives matter, but Black Lives Matter more right now because they need more help. I feel like we give too much credit to people who say all lives matter. Like they should understand the point we're making right now with Black Lives Matter, and they just refuse.
I think genuinely some people just don't. I remember my friend Kenny, she texted me and she was like, did you see what so and so wrote under our friend's post? She was like, I get the whole Black Lives thing, but like all lives matter, like equally. And then Ken like started replying to her and being like, no, that's not fair to say that all lives matter if like so many people's lives aren't being taken as seriously, or as some people like value white lives more than like the other lives. And she was trying to educate those people because some people genuinely do think that like African Americans aren't being treated unfairly.
All lives won't matter until Black Lives Matter. And right now, history is telling us time and time again that Black people are, for the lack of a better word, scum of the earth, when that's not true. And people want to put a blind eye to how many Black folks are getting killed every single day.
Yeah, I feel like it's such a privileged argument. Like,
Yep.
what are you talking about? All lives matter. Like, if you think that and right off of the bat, that's so privileged to be
Yep.
so like ignorant to what's happening in the lives of Black people every day.
Exactly.
It's just fucked. Like the whole Brock Turner thing, like this kid literally raped a girl, got 6 months, but if someone like accused a person, like a Black guy, for raping someone, like not even proven, like they're locked up for like years.
Yeah, that's another issue, is like the prison pipeline. You'll see all these white folks that are getting 2 months or like a year, and then you compare it to someone that's Black and they have like 50 years under their belt. Why? It's the same charge. Why are they getting 50 years and this white person is getting 2 months?
Because the prison industrial complex is just an extension of racism.
Mm-hmm.
How are you guys like educating yourselves further Black Lives Matter and the social justice issues?
I honestly read a lot of different articles, and also like empathy plays a really big part in this. Like if you don't have empathy, and if you don't acknowledge certain privileges you have, and you're not using that privilege to amplify like Black voices and stuff like that, like what are you doing?
Yeah, and for me, I think with the killing of George Floyd, I've just learned about so many stories that I had never heard of. So the two biggest ones that I've learned about is Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. So I just think that with the killing of George Floyd, the reason that I think it just became this huge moment for civil rights is the video evidence of it. Like, I was talking to my mom and I was just like, this man was killed by a police officer, and she's like, that's horrible. But then when I got my phone out and showed her the video, that's when it went from a comment like it's horrible to like actual outrage of how could this have happened. So I think just unfortunately we're in a society where people have been conditioned to pull out your phone and record a police officer, and in this instance it was exactly what we needed to start this whole movement.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And also, yeah, in talking about all this, like even with like George Floyd, yeah, it blew up. And yeah, a lot of Black men are getting killed, but also Black women are too. And I feel like their voices are being less heard over Black men's. And so a lot of Black women are saying like, don't forget about us, because they feel like they are being like swept aside. And so as much as we and society are amplifying the voices of Black men, we need to amplify the voices of Black women in order to get justice all around.
I also just feel like some people, it just goes back to the bubbles. They just live in these bubbles of society where they never have to challenge their beliefs. Like, I'm going to bring this up and you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. But I had a boss who, I told her that I had been to the Taj Mahal. And she was like, oh, you've been to Agrabah? And this was like this skinny, like 60-year-old white woman. And she was completely serious. Like, she had lived 60 years of her life without anyone challenging her to the fact that Agrabah is not a real place. So I just feel like doing more work across to people, they're just ignorant, and then some of them have just these hateful biases. I feel like that's where all the change is going to happen.
Exactly. So I think we are going to end it right there. Donate to organizations such as Black Lives Matter, Freedom Fund, and all other bailout funds for Black folks who have been arrested during protests. We will provide a whole list under our episode description, as there are many organizations you are able to donate to or support in whatever way they have outlined.
All right, guys, thanks for listening to this week's podcast. Next week, we're going to be talking about college. Everything from partying, our majors, where we went, and everything in between. Sat Shri Akal.